Even after draining and using a cleaning wand, this is what's left in your water heater.
When you drain a tanked RV water heater, you do not remove all the water because the drain is actually higher than the bottom of the tank. There's a reason for this, or at least I've been told why they're designed this way. More on that later. But for now, the inability to completely drain an RV water heater has brought up three concerns. The first concern is that when that water still in the tank freezes over the winter, will it expand enough to cause damage? When water freezes, it expands 9%, and because the volume of the water in the tank is so minimal compared to the size of the tank, it's just not a problem. If it was, water heater tanks would have been redesigned many years ago to accommodate complete draining. The next two issues I hear are actually real concerns. The first one involves sediment in the tank. You will get sediment in your tank. It doesn't matter if you have an anode rod or not. It does not matter if you have 27 water filters before the water enters the coach. As water is heated, minerals and total dissolved solids are left behind as the water evaporates. These minerals, like calcium and magnesium, form as sediment, and then that sediment falls to the bottom of the tank. Over time, that sediment can build up and cause the water heater to operate inefficiently. It makes the water heater work harder to produce hot water. That can increase pressure inside the tank, and some of you may be experiencing this already if you have a P&T valve that's always dripping. It can also compromise the structure of the tank, causing the tank to corrode over time. Sediment inside the water heater can also cause clogs in the plumbing lines after the water heater. There's a lot of reasons why you want to get sediment out of your water heater tank. So to get sediment out of the tank, a pretty standard process is to drain and rinse the water heater. It usually involves a water heater wand similar to this one. You just put it in the drain, you spray the water around the inside of the tank, and hope that it agitates the loose sediment enough to push it out of the drain. The process is fine, I guess. You just really never know if you got all the sediment out. The third issue is that for the majority of RVers, these are not our primary home. They are used infrequently. Some of us use them every weekend. Sometimes they sit for weeks or months at a time. You probably don't need a science lesson on what happens to standing water when it sits in dark, warm areas for extended periods of time. Sure, you can absolutely run your water heater for a few minutes at the beginning of a trip, but the new water is mixing with the old water in the tank. It also doesn't necessarily remove any bacteria or mold that's starting to grow on the tank lining itself. Now, sanitizing and descaling your water heater will help with bacteria and mold. I just don't think it's a process that most RVers are doing more than once a year. A drain on the bottom of the water heater would be more efficient at draining the water and removing the sediment, but unfortunately we don't have drains on the bottom of our water heater tanks, so I designed this. It's a reducer that will attach to the hose on your wet vac. I've added 18 inches of 3/8 inch polyethylene, non-toxic, and NSF certified drinking water safe hose that goes into the water heater tank. We built in an adjustable air valve that will accomplish two things, and I'll talk about that more during the demonstration. Before we get to that, there's a couple things worth noting. First, using this adapter does not mean you don't need to or shouldn't still drain and rinse and sanitize your water heater tank. Using a cleaning wand is also going to help remove any sediment that may be stuck on the tank lining itself. Second, if you don't clean your water heater tank regularly, you may have enough calcium or large enough sediment to get stuck in the end of this hose. However, this is nothing a pick or small screwdriver can't easily remove. Now, I did try using some larger hoses when I designed this, but the larger hoses just didn't maneuver inside the tank as well as this size does, and this size seemed to work the best. And one more thing before I demonstrate this, I've talked to a few people who work in the plumbing industry, and apparently the reason water heaters are not designed with a drain at the bottom is because manufacturers do not want sediment to sit at the bottom of a dry tank. The way that it was explained is that if sediment in the tank sits at the bottom of a dry tank, it can actually bond with the tank lining and cause the tank to corrode. With a little bit of water in the tank, that sediment won't be an issue. Now, I haven't been able to confirm this with an actual water heater engineer. I think that would be the best source of information, but it does make some sense. Now, if your water heater tank is free of sediment, it's fine to leave your tank dry. They are manufactured and installed with no water, and they sit on dealer lots for extended periods of time. So just something to consider. This is a tool that should be used to clean your water heater tank, but leaving the tank dry with sediment inside is not advised. All right guys, we're starting with a clean and empty shop vac, and don't forget to switch over to your foam liquid filter if that's what your shop vac calls for. If you have a water heater with an anode rod, most of the time they will exit the tank in a much straighter line, and draining the tank will be a much more straightforward process. But on these aluminum tanks, the drain may be angled down, so you'll probably get the best results by coming up from the bottom and positioning the top of the arch so that the portion of the hose in the tank is down on the bottom of the tank. And of course, you may have to maneuver this a little to get all the water and contaminants out. Now, my water heater has been drained, and I spent about 3 minutes flushing it with a wand. I've also been pretty diligent cleaning my tank every year, but if you haven't been cleaning yours, I'm guessing you'll probably see more contaminants than we will today. Now, before you even turn on your vacuum, open the air valve most of the way. The suction from your vacuum should be strong enough to keep the water flowing through the adapter and not out of the valve. The valve serves two purposes, guys. It prevents your vacuum from deadheading, and if you have an older, weaker vacuum, you can slowly adjust the valve until you have good suction. Most of you, however, will never need to completely close this valve.
All right, guys, let's get started. I always open my P&T valve whenever I'm draining my water heater, and it looks like all the water above the drain is out. Depending on the angle of the drain, you may have to move this around a little, and with the valve open, you can pretty easily see when the hose hits the water. And also, if your specific water heater gas line makes it difficult to maneuver the hose everywhere you want, you can always remove the T&P valve, which will make accessing the bottom of the tank even easier for those of you with a hard angle drain. It looks like we got most of everything out of the tank. I'm going to take the shop vac into the garage. I think it'll be easier to see the sediment, if there is any, with no glare from the sky. My water heater is 6 gallons. I would say this looks to be about a half gallon of water that was left in the tank. As we discussed, this is not anywhere near enough to freeze and damage the tank, but we did get a decent amount of water out of the tank that we don't have to worry about going stagnant. As far as the sediment, I'm actually surprised how much more we got out. Now, I descale and sanitize this tank once a year, and I drain and rinse the tank about 3 or 4 times per year. Yes, that's a little over the top, but it goes to show you how much stuff accumulates and doesn't come out when you rinse. If you're not crazy like me and don't spend as much time as I do maintaining your water heater, you will probably see a lot more in your vacuum. But I'm happy with the results. It definitely removes old water and sediment much better than flushing and draining alone.
If you decide that you want one of these, you'll need to measure the outer diameter of the end of your wet vac hose. Right now, I have 2 adapters. Each adapter has 2 sizes for a total of 4 different available sizes. One adapter will fit a 1 1/4 inch outer diameter hose and a 1 7/8 inch outer diameter hose. The other size will fit a 1 3/4 inch outer diameter hose and a 2 1/4 inch diameter hose. These were the 4 most common sizes among shop vacs. Now, if you have a different size hose, please let me know down in the comments, and if there's enough demand, I'll make that size as well. The hose is going to be 18 inches long, and you will need to install it into the adapter. Just press and twist, and the hose will bottom out once it reaches 3/4 of an inch of depth. And last, the end of the hose will be cut at a straight 90-degree edge. If you want to notch the hose to prevent it from suctioning against a solid surface, or angle the end to better fit your application, I will leave that up to you, but it will come with a straight cut. Also, if you get one of these, I would really like your feedback. There's no rocket science behind it. It's a hose adapter. It's going to work, but access into the different water heater drains will vary depending on the model you have. So if you think more than 18 inches of hose will work better, or there's something else that we can improve on, please let me know. Links to the adapters are down below. I hope you consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.